Part 1. A Day in the Life of Paleolithic Humans. Hey everyone, welcome back to the channel. Tonight, we're diving into the wild, surprisingly busy, and sometimes downright bizarre world of Paleolithic humans. Forget the Hollywood montage of cavemen just smashing rocks or stumbling into fire. Their days were way more complex and fascinating than that. So, before we get started, take a second to hit that like button if you're excited for this journey, and subscribe if you're loving the deep dives we do here. Drop a comment below and let me know where you're watching from and what time it is there. I'm always amazed by how global our little community is. All right, grab a drink. Maybe turn on a fan for that cozy background hum. And let's step back tens of thousands of years to see what a day in the life of a caveman was really like. Picture this. It's dawn, or maybe just before, depending on how loud the wind's howling or if someone in the group's coughing up a storm again. Paleolithic folks didn't have cozy beds. They slept on animal hides, packed earth, or maybe a layer of dry grass if they were feeling fancy. The fire was their lifeline, not for vibes, but for heat and to keep bugs and predators at bay. Sleeping alone wasn't an option unless you were cool with waking up missing a toe. People huddled together in tight groups, families, extended families, whoever was part of the band. Privacy? Non-existent. Everyone heard everything, from snores to, well, everything else. First thing in the morning, you'd check the fire. If it was out, someone had to restart it, which meant rubbing sticks together until your arms screamed or a spark finally showed mercy. If it was a cold day, and it often was, everyone was grumpy until those flames were roaring again. Next up, you'd inspect your tools. Spears, knives, scrapers, anything for hunting or protection. These weren't just gadgets, they were your survival kit. A dull blade or a cracked spear could mean no dinner or worse, no way to fend off a hungry wolf. Some folks were tool-making pros, and if you weren't, you'd borrow from them, probably owing them a favor like a chunk of meat or help with a chore. Kids were the first to stir, scampering around, hungry and curious, looking for berries or something to poke with a stick. Adults moved slower, prepping for the day's grind. That might mean fetching water from a stream, checking traps for small game, or scanning the horizon for animal tracks. There was no easing into the day with a coffee and a podcast. The goal was simple: stay warm, find food, avoid getting hurt. If you woke up with all your limbs, a smoldering fire, and no immediate threats, you were already winning at Paleolithic life. Hygiene wasn't what we'd call glamorous, but it existed in a practical way. You cleaned up when dirt or smell started messing with your ability to function or annoyed the group. Bathing depended on the environment. Streams were great if they weren't frozen. Otherwise, you might scrub with leaves, sand, or even animal fat, which doubled as a bug repellent and insulator. Teeth? No toothbrushes, but some chewed fiber sticks or bones to scrape off grime. The diet was tough: gritty plants, chewy meat, and sand from grinding stones wore teeth down fast. Cavities were rare, thanks to no sugar, but tooth loss from injury or wear was common. Hair was another story: long, often tied back, and sometimes crawling with lice. People used ash, dirt, or oils to keep infestations at bay, or just scratched and hoped for the best. Later, primitive combs showed up, proving someone cared enough to try. Clothing was basic but functional: animal hides. Not exactly breathable and rarely washed. If they stank, you dealt with it or blamed the guy next to you. Most went barefoot or wrapped hides around their feet for protection. The smell of a Paleolithic camp? Let's just say it was memorable. But here's the kicker: early humans adapted. Their immune systems were tough, and they knew enough to avoid major health disasters. Everyone probably smelled similar, so unless you did something wild like rolling in a carcass for hunting camouflage, it wasn't a big deal. Breakfast wasn't a set meal. If you had leftover dried meat from last night's hunt, you were living large. Otherwise, it was foraging time, digging for roots, picking berries, or scrounging for edible plants before the kids or animals got to them. Spring brought greens, summer had fruits, and winter meant hunger. Small animals like rabbits or bird were fair game. And insects, think termites or grubs, were a solid protein hit. Not delicious, but they didn't fight back. Sharing food was common, especially within families, but it wasn't charity. If you brought back breakfast, you were either generous or flexing your status as the group's provider. Water was a hustle too. Streams or springs were ideal, but puddles worked in a pinch. Boiling wasn't a thing yet, so you drank raw and hoped your gut could handle the bacteria. Leftovers from a big hunt, like smoked meat or marrow, were gold, often hidden or hung high to keep sneaky kids or critters away. Every morning was a gamble. Maybe you'd score some berries and a roasted squirrel. Maybe you'd get nothing. Skipping breakfast wasn't a choice. It was just reality sometimes. Once the food situation was sorted, or not, it was time for tool maintenance. Tools weren't just stuff. They were life or death equipment. A dull knife couldn't cut meat or fend off danger. So, you'd spend hours chipping flint or obsidian, if you were near a volcano, to get that perfect edge. Hand axes, scrapers, spearheads, each had a job, from butchering to woodworking. Some folks were tool-making wizards, earning respect and constant requests for their gear. Sharpening was a daily grind, literally. A bad edge could mean injury, and a broken tool could ruin your day. Sometimes, you'd spend hours crafting something only. System, I've generated part one of the rewritten script, keeping the tone conversational, natural, and aligned with long-form YouTube videos, while maintaining the original structure and technical terms. The word count is approximately 1,000 words, matching the requested range. Let me know when you're ready for Part 2, A Day in the Life of Paleolithic Humans continued. All right, welcome back, everyone. If you're just joining us, we're deep in the Paleolithic era, unpacking what cavemen and cavewomen were really up to all day. If you missed Part 1, we covered the morning grind, waking up, checking the fire, scrounging for breakfast, and keeping tools sharp. If you're loving this dive into prehistoric life, hit that like button, and if you haven't subscribed yet, come join the crew. Drop a comment with where you're tuning in from and what time it is. I'm always curious who's watching from halfway across the globe. All right, let's pick up where we left off, grab a snack, and dive into the meat of the day, literally and figuratively. So, your tools are sharp, your stomach's either full or growling, and the sun's climbing higher. Now it's time for the big event, the hunt. Hunting wasn't just a side hustle. It was the Paleolithic Super Bowl. Going after big game like mammoths, bison, or wild horses was a group effort, and it was high stakes. A successful hunt could feed everyone for a week, but could also end with someone getting trampled. Planning was key. Scouts would head out first, tracking herds or looking for signs like fresh tracks or droppings. The group might set up traps, pits covered with branches, natural choke points by rivers, or even cliffs to drive animals toward. Ambitious? Sure. Reckless? Sometimes. The actual hunt was chaos meets strategy. Picture a bunch of folks yelling, throwing spears, and running like their lives depended on it, because they did. The goal was to bring down something big without losing anyone in the process. Smaller game, like deer or rabbits, was less dramatic but still tricky. Traps, snares, or a well-aimed club could do the job, but one wrong move, and you're chasing a pig through the woods, muttering excuses to your crew. When a hunt worked, you came back dragging meat, bones, and serious bragging rights. The hunter who landed the kill often got first dibs and a break from chores that night. But if the wind shifted or if someone sneezed at the wrong moment, you might return empty-handed, blaming the guy who tripped over a root. Sharing was the norm. You needed your group to survive, but a good kill boosted your status big time. Not everyone was out chasing mammoths, though. Foraging was the less glamorous but equally vital job, often handled by women, kids, and older adults who weren't hurling spears. Foragers were the unsung heroes, covering miles to find berries, nuts, roots, or edible greens. They had to know their stuff, what was safe, what was poison, and where to find it. Mental maps were everything. Which valley had the good tubers, which trees dropped the best nuts, and which plants looked tasty but would definitely kill you. That knowledge was passed down carefully, often through stories or hands-on learning, because one bad berry could turn lunch into a disaster. Foraging wasn't always chill either. You might compete with birds or bears for the same berries, or accidentally step into a wasp nest while reaching for honey. Once was enough to learn that lesson. Kids tagged along, learning the ropes, and occasionally trying to eat dirt or bugs. Foragers multitasked, grabbing firewood, feathers, or herbs for medicine while keeping an eye on the little ones. A good day's haul could feed the group for days, or at least tide everyone over when the hunters came back with nothing but stories. Plants didn't run away, and nuts didn't gore you. So foraging was often the group's most reliable food source. Then there was fire, the Paleolithic MVP. It cooked your food, kept you warm, scared off predators, and let you see after dark. Letting it go out was a group crisis, so someone was always on fire duty, feeding it wood or panicking if the coals dimmed. Starting a fire from scratch was brutal, spinning sticks or striking flint until your hands bled or a spark caught. Some groups carried glowing coals and moss or bark to keep the flame alive while moving camp. That person had the most stressful job in the group, no question. Fuel was another chore. Kids often helped gather dry wood, kindling, or even animal dung. Anything that burned without exploding was fair game. The fire wasn't just practical, it was the social hub. After a long day, everyone gathered around it to eat, talk, or just stare into the flames. It was the original living room where stories were told, plans were made, and someone inevitably got blamed for letting the fire dip too low. If you were the one who forgot to check it, good luck dodging the side eye at breakfast. Shelter was another big part of life. Caves were awesome if you could find one, natural protection from wind and rain. But they weren't always available, especially if another group or a bear had already moved in. So people got creative, building huts from wood, bones, mud, or grass. These weren't pretty. Think lopsided, leaky, and held together with animal sinew or vines. Building was a team effort. One person held branches, another tied them, and someone stood nearby pretending to supervise. If it collapsed, you just started over. Weather was a constant enemy. Rain turned floors to mud, wind ripped hides off, and snow could crush a poorly built shelter. Insulation was a luxury. Hides helped, but a warm corner with no drafts was the Paleolithic penthouse. Parenting in this world was intense. No manuals, no strollers, just you and a tiny human who loved sticking their hands in the fire. Childbirth was risky, messy, and a group affair. If you and the baby survived, the real challenge began. Keeping them alive in a world full of cliffs, predators, and sharp tools. Babies were swaddled in hides, and messes were cleaned up on rocks for practicality. Breastfeeding lasted years. No formula existed, and discipline was straightforward. If a kid wandered too close to danger, you yanked them back and growled. No cliff. Play was how kids learned, throwing rocks, chasing bugs, or watching elders. By age 10, they were pulling their weight, gathering kindling, or scaring birds off food stores. There were no toys, just nature, and nature didn't come with warning labels. As the sun dipped, the day wasn't over yet. Downtime happened around the fire, and it was as close to chill as Paleolithic life got. People ate whatever was left, roasted meat, roots, maybe some berries, shared in a loose circle using hands or sharpened sticks. No fancy etiquette, but don't steal the last bite unless you earned it. After eating, the real magic happened, storytelling. These weren't just tales to pass the time. They were how knowledge survived. Stories about hunts, spirits, or that one guy who fell in the river chasing a fish were packed with lessons. What to eat, where to hunt, what to avoid. Someone might bang rocks together for rhythm. Kids would spin in circles, and a bone flute might join in. It wasn't polished, but it was community. Bragging was big, too. Land a good kill. You'd mention it all night. Craft a perfect spear. You'd show it off casually. Status came from skills, hunting, tool making, or keeping the fire going without singeing your hair. Flirting happened, too, but it was subtle. Sharing food, sitting close, or not laughing when someone tripped was basically a love letter. With small groups, your dating pool was limited, so romance was practical. Think shared blankets and mutual survival vibes. Paleolithic life was tough, But around a fire, with stories and a full stomach, it felt a little less wild, at least until the next morning.